Dove Kull is an institution for all of Alaska, and to talk about her tonight, we are pleased to have her friend Susan Clark come and tell some stories about Dove Kull.
Throughout Dove's long life, she was a pioneer and in the care and treatment of children and the elderly. She worked on behalf of bicultural and intercultural and migrant and minority people and groups. She was passionate about social justice, women's rights, human rights, civil rights, and the consequent necessary government reform. Dove had a full career of 37 years in Oklahoma before coming here. She worked for against the segregation of Indian tribes and developed social service policies during the economic national breakdown and the Great Dust Bowl of the 1930s. She retired, and her husband had died, and so Dove went looking for some adventure in Alaska. Her first job was to be sent out to the bush to interview specific villagers, randomly selected in Washington, D.C., about the possible abuses that the conservative Congress thought might be happening in the National Welfare Program of AFDC. So at 62, she came, she slept on floors, she traveled by bush plane, horse, riverboat, dog sled, snowmobile, and badarka. At one point, she was to interview a woman who lived in a difficult 10 miles away from the village, and so they agreed to meet each other on the trail at a halfway point. She traveled to the Pribilofs to unravel a system of paternalism affecting the Aleuts. And in her early 70s, she was on a medical team that served 30 Arctic villages while living in Kotzebue. Back in the big city, she established the first real standards for daycare and established the first accredited daycare center in Alaska. And she did that with unclaimed federal monies from Arkansas. And then she found some more to take them beyond Juneau to Anchorage and Fairbanks. In her mid to late 70s, she created what became the nation's first homemaker home health care health-aide service, which allowed elders to stay in their homes and be cared for. She remarked to a friend with a chuckle, "Well, I do this because who knows, maybe I'll get old sometime." She retired again after 20 years of Alaskan time, and only to become a powerful citizen lobbyist, which is when I met her. I met her and was so grateful to have her as a different generation supporting the legislation for women and children that I was working on. And I noticed that the picture up there is, she spent many Christmas Eves with us. She retired, and then at the age of 77, she took on the state and the nation with a policy paper on obstacles faced by older Alaskan women at their Equal Rights Conference in Dallas, and which eventually led to the establishing of the Older Alaskans Commission, which she was not appointed as a charter member. You can imagine that she was not without political adversaries, but she never took no from any elected official or administrator. She wrote a note to my daughter and said, "Keep going when you know you are right." Dove knew how to create change with intelligence and humor. She was skilled and she was willing to share, and she was very generous in mentoring others. At the age of 88, the Juneau Aware Shelter was named for her, Dove Cottage, a place of peace, a humble, safe home. At the same time when she was advocating very effectively for low-income elderly housing in Juneau. A young Juneau woman about that time, who was 19 about that time, fresh from Chicago, recalls the powerful impact of seeing Dove walking down the street in her red parka-like coat and thinking, who is that elegant woman? Dove, her hair white and poised, embodied the quintessence of self-possession with no self-consciousness, a woman who could hold on to her own integrity and not allow any threat from the exterior material world to take away her security. Dove's vision, initiative, determination, and energy inspired us all, and her issues and effectiveness knew no age boundary.